And I was going to talk today a little bit about how our role as a consultancy and some of the problems, actually, with our type of role, coming into what is a long-term regeneration project for Cranbrook. So Cranbrook is part of an urban extension, going to be bolted onto the southeastern edge of Exeter. Currently, it's a population of 1,300 homes, with a population of about 4,000 people. And interestingly enough, it is pretty well complete private ownership, made up of a consortium of three large volume housing developers. And I think we've got some people in the room who've worked originally on the original plans for Cranbrook. And I know it's been quite a difficult process, I think over a 15-year process to get to that original stage. But what it did do was get to a point of delivery where there was no vision, much as Alistair and Kevin has been saying, for the development. And there was no long-term expanded master plan. We came in at the point of which these homes had been built, and the community was really starting to suffer. And I think there was some recognition from the consortium that the lack of cultural infrastructure was really causing some perceived views of this is a place where we do not want to live. And so there's a willingness, I think, there to re-engage and to think about how some vitality and some re-engagement with that community might be being re-engaged. Now, oddly enough, we were appointed by the district council in terms of the players and not by the consortium. And so that's East Devon District Council. Hugely under-resourced, quite weak in terms of its political drive and understanding. And so there's immediately quite a significant power imbalance there between the private consortium and the district council. District council brought in Savills to work and to develop a master plan for the next phase of development, which would lead to a population of 20,000 of 8,000 homes over the next 20 years. So phase one is just to the left of the town centre, and you can see how the rest of the development is planned now to develop. They've got to the point now of having gone through consultation and to develop their development planning document, now called the Cranbrook Plan, which sets out the parameters for development. And interestingly, culture is not mentioned at all. So, how do we get to that point? And why? Some of the players. Currently, there is this population of people living in Cranbrook, mostly young people, couples, young families. Short-term, a lot of short-term lets and lots of short-term people living there. We have an emerging town council, which when we started this project hadn't yet been formed. And that town council is made up obviously mainly of volunteers, but is starting to gather a really strong community voice. We have East Devon District Council, which is acting as facilitator, obviously local planning authority. And then we have the developer consortium. So we're at this point when they recognise the new master plan needed to develop, and we were asked to develop a public art strategy as a starting point. So it soon became quite clear that our role had to develop beyond public art and to embrace cultural development in its broadest form. And that was quite a challenge. So what we did really to start off with was to develop to recognise that these places are, as many times people have said before, are not new. There is a cultural history, there is a cultural legacy. There are attributes to the place. Cranbrook itself is on an arterial travelling route down to the southwest, And things like archaeological finds, we've got things like the stones from looms that were dropped along the way were found. We've got things like the beaker pottery, well known, from the southwest. We've got, obviously, axe heads. So that huge resource of both physical artifacts, the built heritage, the stories and narratives of the two villages which it lies adjacent to, we felt was important to capture, form a resource which could be built upon in future years. So we developed the Cranbrook Chronicles as a starting point to get a baseline activity of what is there and how it could be developed. We then started the process of understanding how people are starting to moderate their environment, how they're starting to make claim through engagement activities. And to start that process, as you've seen before this afternoon, so I won't dwell on it too much in terms of community engagement, different forms, individuals, groups, and finding ways in which to allow people to talk and to express voices. So we worked with the various groups, not employing artists, interestingly, working straight with the groups. And over the last 4 to 5 years, 40, 50 groups have now started to evolve. And so it's this quite interesting idea of things happen without the Arts Council and how to get initiated groups and how you support those. And they do emerge, and we felt that that should be supported. So in terms of developing the approach for the cultural strategy, we felt that it should be very wide-ranging. And the word art, public art, barely arises. Went through master planning process through design charrettes with Savills. And that was a very open and engaged process, looking at how to develop 4 or 5 different development options for Cranbrook for the wider scale town. And that started that dialogue and actually helped start and help the town council, which was in its nascent form, start to understand what it wanted, particularly, and the community members, what it wanted from this expanded town. So one of the things we did was, and were interested in developing or understanding, was that sense of narrative within the communities and what people want and how they want it and what different groups and different individuals feel are important to them. And the similar types of assets and similar type of activities emerged that might occur in any new place. Swimming pools are a big one, social clubs. There's no pub. You have to walk miles to a pub currently. There's nowhere to meet. There's a community centre, which isn't really used because it seems to be dominated or owned by the district council. So some very base level cultural infrastructure, social infrastructure, is what that need was. So how did we think about developing a cultural plan, and how would we start to make the argument in terms of the role for culture within Cranbrook in an environment which was heavily one-sided in terms of land ownership and political and commercial power, and quite weak politically, and with us being employed by the district council rather than through the consortium. So we felt that we should start to make some of the arguments around cultural density and improving the quality of life, and particularly in terms of starting, as one of the speakers said earlier, starting to use, I think it was Kyra, starting to use some of the language that developers use. And we drew upon some of the Arts Council's work back in 2018, slightly questionable perhaps in terms of its objectivity and how it could be delivered, but starting to make the argument that cultural density, particularly in a place, does look in the long term start to contribute to land values and to housing values, and therefore it's a good thing from that perspective. I think what we wanted to do was to start to think about normalizing the process of culture and not it being seen as something different, something coming in from the outside, and it being, obviously, as other speakers said, something foisted upon or short-termism, but wanted it to be a normal part of provisioning and spatial master planning. So what we started to do was think about how we could develop a model, to think about how, with people-centered approach first, followed by skills, activities, and then lastly, supporting culture infrastructure to start to engage with people over a short, medium, long-term process. So the idea of people as catalysts, champions. There was no champion at all for culture, no champion, no resident champion. So that vacuum exists, and I think one of the things that's really important is to have that champion. And how to bring together communities of interest, how to support those communities of interest, I think we wanted to explore. I think we're interested in skills development, quite interested in terms of absolutely similar type of structure. I think we felt it incredibly important that those skills, creative skills within the community, were supported, and that those skills should come out of that community, out of communities, and be supported at an individual, group, and wider town level. So how do you do that? Through mentoring, co-design, cultural startup support, apprenticeships, a wide range of activities to develop that sort of ownership. And then I suppose in terms of activities, I think we were interested in allowing for a sense of anarchy or a sense of self-determination in terms of how activities that support and build towards a sense of narrative could be developed, really through supporting self-initiated activity, supporting the idea of a narrative development, supporting what was happening in terms of Cranbrook days, community days, pumpkin days, which was happening. So how do you bolster those and make those highlights of the year, and to give that sense of community confidence, which I think is so needed. Out of time, very quickly. So some of the mechanisms, which I think I'd like to quickly talk, I'm completely out of time.
Yes.
2 minutes. One of the ideas we felt, as talked before, there's a disjoint between the planning system and through 106 obligations and actually seeing cultural provisioning on the ground. So one of the ideas we have introduced is the idea of cultural credits, which come from the developer to individual householders to be spent on their interests and their creative activity, a bit like cycle provision or cycle to work schemes. And that's had some help. Some things around... You like that, good. We'll talk more. Other ideas, meanwhile space has been talked about. And in the development plan, we have managed to get both planned meanwhile space, which is an odd thing, and unplanned meanwhile space put in. And so I think that whole area of meanwhile space is really important. And I will leave it there.